Now, on the surface, this seems like a reasonable measure. I'm not particularly worried about the contents or the impact of this specific bill, but it does raise a bit of a red flag. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the very first episode of School of Thought, a series in which I will be exploring current affairs, pressing issues and insightful articles, all to do with topics of homeschooling, education and parenting. In this first episode, we're diving deep into a few issues that have been surfacing in the education world in the last few months. Firstly, we'll be looking at the surge in homeschooling in the UK, the heartbreaking case of Sara Sharif, and the growing debate about the role and relevance of university education. These topics impact us all as parents and educators, so let's get into it. Let's start with some promising news for homeschoolers. According to the Department of Education, as reported by Schools Week, the number of children being home educated in the UK has risen by 21% in just 1 year. This is incredibly encouraging. For those of us who homeschool, it means that we're part of a growing movement that is being recognised. It's no longer the weird hippie thing to do that outsiders would be part of, that you would have been considered as totally wacky, 20 odd years ago. It's a movement that's gaining traction and attention. With more families now opting for this path, it means that there'll be more resources, there'll be more weekday activities available for homeschooled children. But alongside this growth also comes an increase of responsibility. The article highlights concerns about children missing education, or CME. These are children who aren't receiving a formal education in school and are not deemed to be doing so otherwise. And this might often be due to complex family situations. And this is something that we as a homeschooling community need to address proactively. We need to ensure that homeschooling is a well-supported and recognised option and not just a cover for neglect or abuse. Now, this sadly brings us on to our second article, which discusses the case of Sara Sharif. This is a really sad case about a 10-year-old girl who was taken out from school, supposedly to be home educated, and was killed by her father 4 months later. Stories like this are really heartbreaking, and they really remind us that we need to take steps to protect the vulnerable in society. Now, unfortunately, what's happening is that homeschooling is now becoming a scapegoat for this situation. There's a tendency to use situations like this to advocate for increasing stringency or increasing regulations on home education. Because clearly homeschooling is not the root cause, as opposed to the systemic failure to identify children at risk and to support those who are vulnerable. So the proposed bill mentioned in the article would prevent parents with protection orders from homeschooling their children. Now, on the surface, this seems like a reasonable measure. I'm not particularly worried about the contents or the impact of this specific bill, but it does raise a bit of a red flag. It's a step that could very much lead to more stringent or restrictive policies down the line. For Muslim families especially, homeschooling offers a way for us to integrate our values and our religion into our daily life and into the educational journey of our children. It's a lifeline protecting our faith, our identity and family cohesion. And so steps being taken by governments or other organizations to restrict that will have a significant impact on our freedoms. It's vital that we stay informed and involved in all of these ongoing discussions. It's quite possible that, scapegoating home education, what starts off with one reasonable bill could end up developing into a slippery slope into tighter and tighter regulation and sometimes discrimination. And homeschooling is in fact not allowed in many European countries and other places around the world. So it's really vital that we stay informed and involved in these discussions. And article number 3 for today. Is university education becoming infantilized? So let's talk about this thought-provoking piece from The Spectator. This article was one of the top 5 most read articles from The Spectator in 2024. And it explores the state of university education and argues that university education is becoming increasingly infantilized. On the one hand, there's been a positive shift towards acknowledging more mental health struggles and creating a more supportive environment for students. This is important as the pressure on young people today is immense. However, there is a fine line between support and coddling. The article raises concerns about whether universities today are really preparing students for real-world challenges. For example, some institutions are scaling back academic rigor in the name of inclusivity or well-being. While these goals might be noble, they shouldn't come at the expense of a quality education. Another alarming trend is that many students are entering university lacking even the basic level of skills required to excel in their courses. Things like critical thinking, independent study skills, and even basic literacy in some cases. Universities are really struggling to bridge these gaps. And so it really does raise the question of, what is the model of the university? What is it for? What are we trying to achieve? Many people are even asking themselves, and as home educating parents, asking for our children, is university even worth it anymore? In today's world where AI and technology are rapidly advancing, the state of educational institutions, whether that be schools or universities, simply won't be able to keep up with the pace of change. The traditional model of education is being severely disrupted. Knowledge is no longer confined to the halls of academia. With online courses, open source materials, different learning tools, and now the progression of artificial intelligence, learning has become more easily accessible than ever. This democratization of knowledge is really exciting, but then it also poses a huge question for universities. As parents, we need to think really critically about what kind of education will truly benefit our children in the future and prepare them for a future that we have no idea what will be like. Of course, in some career paths, it's a requirement, but is that university pathway still really as important as it used to be? Are there alternative routes that might seem as a better alternative in this rapidly evolving world? So these three stories paint a picture of an educational landscape which is shifting rapidly. In this School of Thought series, we'll be exploring these changes and what they mean for us as parents, as educators, and as members of the community. If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comments. Jazakumullah khair for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.